Good morning to all. Good morning to all, and welcome to the officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Education, and the National Schools Dietary Services Limited. My name is Senator Wade Mark, Chairman of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. May I say from the outset that the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee has a mandate to consider and report to the House on the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of all enterprises that are owned or controlled by or on behalf of the state. The Auditor General's report on any such accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements, and whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, and whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the National Schools Dietary Services Limited for the financial years 2016 to 2019, and follow up on the implementation of the recommendation into the report of the Auditor General's on a special audit of the school nutrition program managed by the NSDSL. The committee is desirous of hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at the National Schools Dietary Services Limited in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee is to help the National Schools Dietary Services Limited to improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. This virtual meeting is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Participants are advised that their microphones should remain muted until recognized by the chair. May I, at this time, allow other members of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee to introduce themselves. Members?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rata Deonarain, member.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Rashtan Pare, member.
Thank you. May I invite representatives to introduce themselves in the following order. Ministry of Finance, Investment Division, Ministry of Education, and National Schools Dietary Services Limited. In that order.
Good morning, everyone. I am Chintamani Suku, Acting Director, Social and Economic Transformation, To my left, I have Mr. Suresh Dan, Acting Senior Business Analyst, and to my right, I have Ms. Tikia Gordon, Business Analyst.
Officials from the Ministry of Education.
Kurt Meyer, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education.
Lisa Henry David, Chief Education Officer, Acting Ministry of Education.
Naima Hussein, Director of School Supervision.
Lisa Madri Valade, Acting Director, Research Planning and Technical Services Division, Ministry of Education.
Yes. We have another official or representative, Lisa?
Yes, good morning.
Okay, thank you so very much, Mrs. Madri. May I now go on to the National Schools Dietary Services Limited officials?
Good morning. I am Susan Corbett, the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the National School Dietary Services Limited.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, everyone.
Sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, Madam C.
Okay. You go first. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Martin Lumpkin, Director of the Board of NSDSL.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. I am Samantha Felix, Director, National School Dietary Services Limited.
Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. Sina Ramatali, Director on the NSDSL board.
Anyone else?
Good morning, Chair. Sorry for rushing. I am Stacey Barron, CEO of the National Schools Dietary Services Limited.
Thank you. We have anyone else?
Good morning, Chair and other members. My name is Vanessa Martina, Program Manager, Nutrition Services.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Alisa Mohammed, Program Manager, Operations.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? If not,
good morning.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you, Indra.
Yeah, good morning. Indra Mutu, Accountant at NSDSL.
May I, at this time, invite the Permanent Secretary or her representative of the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, to make a brief opening statement. Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I thank you for the invitation to this meeting today. The Investment Division of the Ministry of Finance is responsible for executing the investment policy as prescribed by government. The mandate of the division includes oversight, monitoring, and where necessary, the rationalization of government equity holding in commercial enterprises. The division acts on behalf of the Minister of Finance Corporation Sole and carries out the corporate function. This includes representation of the Minister at shareholders' meetings, establishment of new enterprises, and rationalization of the investment portfolios of the shareholder. Thank you.
Thank you. May I invite the Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education to make a brief opening statement.
Chairman, members of the committee, members of the public, the Ministry of Education is very pleased to be here today as we review the audited financial statements of the National Schools Dietary Services Limited company for the years 2016 to 2019. The school nutrition program managed by the NSDL has been a core element of the ministry's inclusive policy, which has sought to strengthen the educational opportunities of our students by providing nutritious meals for those in need. The NSDL has performed this task in spite of challenges brought about by reduced budgetary allocations and rising food prices. The ministry and officials from NSDL stand ready to assist today this committee in its deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, may I invite either the Chief Executive Officer or the Chairman of the National Schools Dietary Services Limited to make a brief opening statement.
Good morning, all. Chairman and honorable members of the Public Accounts Committee, CEO and staff of the National School Dietary Services, peers and representatives of the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Education. The pleasure is mine to be part of this exercise this morning on behalf of the Board of Directors of the National School Dietary Services. We thrive on, providing value for money, being efficient in our services, and being effective in how we execute the program of the National School Dietary Services Limited. We started as a board in August 2021, and we have been availed of all, at least most of the information as it relates to the operations of the National School Dietary Services Limited. So we are pleased to be part of this exercise today. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all so very much. And may I begin by posing a few questions for clarification on this very important organization, company, known as the National School Dietary Services Limited. I would like to ask the following question, and the chairman can direct who would be best placed to answer this question. Could you share with this committee what is the current estimated daily number of breakfasts and lunches served per educational district by category of schools?
Okay, thank you. I will now direct this question to the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Barron.
Mrs. Barron, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, what I'll have to present is figures prior to the pandemic and figures currently served. At this point, we are in fact serving the secondary schools, 132 secondary schools, and we're providing to the secondary schools 6,403 meals per week. And the reason I'm not giving a daily figure is because every day, because of the rotation in the secondary schools, because of the rotation, we have different numbers on different days. So what we have there is for South, we have 6,403 meals per week, Central 5,503 meals, East 5,873 meals, and for the North Zone 5,480 meals, a total for the week of 23,257 breakfasts, and lunches 6,543 lunches for the South Zone, 5,753 lunches for the Central Zone. East Zone is 6,473 meals. The North Zone is 6,530 meals, and we have a total of 25,299 meals. The total budgetary, let me just go back down before. It costs actually $256,152.38 to provide those meals on a weekly basis. Prior to the But Chair, I don't know if you want me to go into prior to pandemic, what we were serving. I'll just
yes, yes. Let us go back to prior pandemic.
Yeah, prior to the pandemic, before March 2020, we would have been serving the ECC. Let me just get my figures from 2020. The ECC centers, we would have been providing 47,773 meals. Well, daily figure would have been 79,000 lunches, approximately 79,000 lunches, and 54,000 breakfasts before the pandemic. I'll just try to break down the figures now for the year 2019 to 2020. ECC, we would have been providing 47,753 breakfasts. Primary, 3,552,820 breakfast meals. Secondary, 1,031,464 meals. Technical, vocational, 90,731 meals. Special, 52,528 meals, and that would have given us a total number of breakfasts for the year, 4,775,296 meals. For the lunch figure, ECC, 542,316 meals. For the primary schools, 4,728,463 meals. For the secondary schools, lunch meals, 1,424,236 meals. And technical vocational, 101,279 meals. So that will give us 6,872,253. This is at a total cost of $104,760,024.71.
Is that for the two sets of meals, both the breakfast and lunches? Or is that the combined costs?
Yes, Chair.
Would you be kind enough to just disaggregate for us how much it will cost for breakfast and how much it will cost for lunches?
Right. So the cost of the breakfast meal is $6.63, and preschool meals are $8.28, and the cost of a lunch is $9. So I'm going to disaggregate the number of the total cost for the ECCE is 5 lunches, $5,051,673.54. The lunches for the primary schools, $687,26. And for the secondary, $14,420,387.73.
Repeat that. Excuse me, Ms. Barron, could you repeat that number? Is it 14 or 40?
14. Okay. $14,420,387.73, Jim.
Right.
Technical, $1,025,449.79. And we have the special schools, $769,087.35. And when I say special, I refer to like Lady Hochoy and those, those schools.
Yes.
Special schools.
Okay. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. Now, you started off by talking about the period 2020, 2021 in terms of the pandemic period in terms of allocation and distribution, focusing specifically, as you said, on the secondary school system, because that is what is now open on a rotational basis. Could you indicate to us how have you been able to administer this program between 2020, 2021, and in 2022? What are some of the challenges that this company is facing in addressing this school nutritional program for the period 2020 to the present time in this period of the pandemic? Could you share with us some of your challenges?
Thank you, Chair. And of course, as you would have alluded to it as well before in your speech, the cost of the rising food costs, that would have been our major challenge, because the program has contracted prices to caterers. So the prices per meals, according to their contract, is $6.63 for breakfast, $8.28 for the preschool meal, and $9 for the lunch meal. Of course, if there's rising food costs, the caterers will find it being a big challenge to procure the ingredients for the meal. And of course, remember, our objective is meeting 1/3 RDA for lunch and 1/4 RDA, the recommended dietary allowance for breakfast. So that's our major challenge right now in terms of trying to work with suppliers. We have approved suppliers that we work with to try to get volume prices for the caterers. However, because of the opening of the secondary schools, you'd realize from the figures, well, you see from the 2020, prior to 2020, when I would have called out the 79,000 and the 54,000 breakfast and lunch, those volumes were big volumes. Right now, we're doing 1 to 5% of that volume. Hence the reason the income to the caterers have been cut drastically in terms of what they work for now. So therein lies the challenge, because whereas if you're procuring larger volumes, you will get lower prices. But right now, that is not the case. And, the profit margins have been lower. In the pandemic period, of course, we would have had to retrain, we would have had to redesign. Luckily for the program, we have always been a big, food safety has been a very big area for us in terms of the standards for the kitchen, standards for the program. So face mask was nothing new for us, for example, because we, in the boxing line, when we're boxing food, actually staff wear face masks. Sanitizing and cleaning and all that in terms of standard operating procedures, those are procedures that we have. We had to change in terms of training. We would have enforced training. We had to look at hand wash facilities on the outside, coming in, sanitizing, ensuring that everybody who comes into the facilities will fill out the declaration forms, take temperature checks. We have a zero tolerance policy in terms of employees coming in, because of course we want to ensure that every meal that we supply is safe and nutritious as well for the children. Going into the schools, the other issue that, luckily we have all our, I don't know if I could say that, but vaccination status. All our employees have been vaccinated and are being safe. Protocols are being followed. So, in terms of the pandemic, I don't see the delivery in terms of those meals being delivered, and the care and safety, they are also followed. So our biggest challenges would have been, right now we have been getting releases on a timely manner. And of course, we've been paying the caterers as they send invoices in as well.
Yeah. May I also inquire what has happened? Well, before I deal with what has happened, could you share with us the total number of caterers within the system of the National Schools Dietary Services Company Limited? What is the number of caterers you have at this time on your register?
Chair, at this time, we have 69 caterers. Prior to the pandemic, we had 75. So that was one of our challenges as well. Through the period where we were not feeding, some of the caterers were actually at a disadvantage in terms of finances, and they had to close their businesses.
Now, I know that the government had made efforts to come to the assistance of some of these individuals and organizations that were experiencing financial challenges because of the lockdowns, because of the closure of schools for a very long time at one time. Can you share with us what efforts were made to at least reach out and provide some kind of support, some financial assistance to these caterers who had their expenses to cater for, but they were not getting the demand for them to supply meals, and therefore they would have been in a difficult situation. What, if anything, was done to come to their assistance, even if it means on a temporary basis? Any assistance, any approaches to the government to work with these caterers to provide them with some support?
Chair, we worked with the Ministry of Finance, and we worked closely to try to get grants for the employees, because we have over 750 employees that were affected in terms of the single mothers. You have 80% of our staff at kitchens are women. And this we would have worked with Ministry of Finance. We would have gotten about 80% in terms of my last check, in terms of those grants. So those were provided. In addition to which, we try to work with the banks in terms of, we have a facilitation. We have worked with ADB in lending money to the caterers, and we've asked for time in terms of those loans. We've done letters. We've tried to work with the caterers in terms of that kind of support lending, to the banks, and and we also tried to do some proposals where we would have proposed to do community feeding, but of course, because of the pandemic and the Ministry of Health guidelines, they did in fact think that it would have encouraged grouping and of course the spread of the virus. So we did try to get some income, and we tried to work with the banks and the financial institutions. And we did try to work with Ministry of Finance, who actually was quite helpful, and they keep giving us feedback in terms of what documents and that they needed from these caterers and their staff, and we try to get some assistance there.
Could you tell us, out of the 75 caterers prior to the entry of the pandemic into our society, COVID-19 virus, can you tell us what, or put it another way, how many caterers have closed down their operations on a permanent basis and they have gone out? How many of them have had to close down on a temporary basis? and how many have begun to restart some limited operations given the rotational arrangements at the secondary school level? Can you share with us?
Yes. Well, we have 6 caterers closing on a permanent basis. Out of the 69, we have 50 operating on the, 49 to 50, because we had one caterer, because of profit margin, they would have reduced as well. Because you see what's happening at the schools, because we're trying to reduce wastage and we're trying to maximize in terms of the input, we change figures with the schools. We work together with the principals and the teachers. And today you might be providing 50 meals. And if the volume of students coming in on the next week goes down to 30, then that number changes to 30. And you could imagine, in terms of a size of operation like ours, having 80 meals and 100 meals, just it does not make economic sense for some caterers. So while caterers are working with us and they're trying to bridge the gap, because everybody understands the need for the meals, because only weekend we were hearing from a parent who indicated to us that their child wanted to go back to school for food, for meals. And I mean, it made us feel very important, because I know we're providing that service. And, some of the children, their parents have lost jobs, and, they look forward to the meal. Sometimes it's the only meal that they get, or, one meal for the day in addition to that. So it's quite important. So the caterers have been bridging the gap. They have not been making a lot of money, but to start the business back and their love for the provision of meals for the nation's children, they're working hand in hand with us. Chair, we're not hearing you.
No, my mic was off. I beg your pardon. I was asking a question, Mrs. Barron, whether, if you can share with us, what will happen with a further expansion of your school nutrition program and the engagement of more caterers and an expansion of the school nutrition program, with the government's recent decision that is, to resume classes at the secondary school level, if I am not mistaken, from 1 to 4, and then come April, back to the primary school level. Can you share with us how will this impact on a further expansion and a further ramping up in your production and catering of meals for both the primary and secondary school populations?
Yeah. Chair, we have, so far our budget is $1.2 million for what we're providing right now. Our allocation for the year was $41 million. And with the increase on the 7th of February, where the standard 5s in the primary schools will be coming out, and the 1 to 3 in the secondary schools from the 7th of February, we are working closely with the Ministry of Education in getting those numbers. And yes, we're fully ready to start. We have the budgetary allocation for the meals as well. So as our Honorable Minister would have indicated to the public that, children coming in will be provided with both breakfast and lunches. So we stand ready to serve.
Right. Now, I just wanted to follow up on that by asking, we have had a situation where at the level of the primary schools and the secondary school, and we know pending resumption in February and in April, what is going to take place. I wanted to ask you, as CEO, what contingencies or what kind of initiatives did your organization and our company recommend to the National Schools Dietary Services Company to cater for children who are not at this time actively involved at the primary school level, but they're at home, online, conducting online classes at home. They may have challenges with their parents being unemployed because of closures of businesses, retrenchment. I wanted to ask, like in Miami, Florida, where even though there were closures of schools, you still had the catering for children at the primary, at the, let's say, kindergarten level, at the primary school level, the equivalent, throughout the closure. So you had the schools being used as a central collection point, so parents could have come and collect their meals for their children and take it to their homes, rather than having these children having to fight up to get a meal, even though the government came up with some food box or they had some program that the government had introduced. I wanted to ask you whether any proposal would have been made to the government to ensure that your population at the ECC centers, primary school levels, and those at that time who were not at the secondary school face-to-face classes, their parents could have still come to the schools and pick up their lunch boxes for their children, so that that nutritional level could have been retained, particularly when you take into account several parents being retrenched, being dismissed, and not being able to have the wherewithal to provide proper meals for their children. Did any such proposal, were you able to put forward any such proposal to the government so that you could have continued your school nutrition program even in the face of the lockdowns?
Yes, Chair, we did. Yeah. Hello? Yes.
Yes.
We did, in fact, do a proposal as, to have community feeding, where we would have used a combination of the community centers, the MP offices, the schools as the point of distribution for the children. And we actually, in May 2020, we did do an exercise where the caterers themselves, they donated meals. And through MP offices, we got all MP offices to distribute those meals, and they were well received. Actually, they put a delivery system. We helped as well to get those meals to the children. They were well appreciated. It was not the full amount. What we had proposed is that in every community, every area, we would have done 500 meals. So we would have scaled down in terms of crowding and that kind of thing, but we would have met the nutritional needs. And you're right, because there are some children at home, and and our children who we normally provide the meal, and remember, we're providing the quota recommended dietary allowance and the third dietary allowance, breakfast and lunch. And what is happening when this child is at home, and how many children are like that. So our minister did in fact approve, and we were on with it, but then we had a surge in COVID-19 cases. And of course, children are very susceptible So we had to pull back in terms of that proposal. But yes, we looked at the models around the world because everybody had the Meals on Wheels and they had the distribution. Even I had worked together with Tobago to do the same proposal, and they had actually put that in place as well, where the children were in fact getting the meals through the community centers and the at certain drop-off points. So it was something that that was considered, but of course everything is subject to the time.
Yeah, Mrs. Barron, may I ask whether you have any data that would show us and the country during the period when you had exercised the initiatives that you just outlined, how many children would have been catered for given your population at the various, given the various categories. That is, the ECC centers, the primary schools, the secondary schools, those children with those special needs children, the vocational and technical population. When you were dealing with the 500 per community or constituency, when you look at the deficit, what was supplied and what was not supplied? Do you have any data to share with us as to how many people would have been required to have meals, but because of your circumstances, these are the amounts that you were able to supply, and therefore you were not able to reach, let's say, X number of students in the categories that I've just outlined? Do you have any data to substantiate?
Well, Chair, we didn't start the initiative. We had just proposed, but we had actually allocated for each area 500 meals. So the target would have been, normally we provide 71% of our meals to the primary schools, 21% to the secondary schools, 5% to the ECC. So it would have been in that kind of ratio. We would have gotten those meals, but we did not execute because, as I say, we had a rise in numbers.
Yeah, but since then, what efforts have been made to continue that program that you put in writing and discuss with the relevant authorities? Because we know that the infection rate has been going up and down, deaths have been going up and down, but the reality is that there are critical needs out there at a nutritional level that our children would need. So can you tell us what efforts have been made by you to re-emphasize the need for that particular program that you would have drawn up and discussed with the relevant authorities to see if anything could be done to get your organization involved in reaching out to these communities and the children in particular?
Well, Chair, with the opening of primary schools where we have the standard 5s coming in, this will make it very easy in terms of rolling out such a proposal, because then you have the primary schools open. If we reconsider the proposal, the children can in fact come to the primary schools and the community centers and receive those meals. So if we have a further 10%, as we propose the further 10% increase for the primary schools, then we can accommodate for the children who are online and need the meals as well, because we have that data. So that can be something that that we can look at with the Ministry of, well, our line ministry and Ministry of Finance.
Would you be kind enough to share with us, this committee that is, the actual the document that you would have drawn up as it relates to your attempt to reach communities? And you did give us a number of 500 meals. I would like you to share with our committee a copy of that proposal, so we can have a better understanding of what you were attempting during the height of this pandemic to reach our children who you would have traditionally catered for prior to the pandemic?
Yes, Chair, that is no problem. We can send the proposal forward.
And the final point I'd like to raise before I ask my other colleagues to join me in furthering this inquiry would be, I know that you did emphasize two main challenges that you encountered, but essentially of a financial nature. You talked about, of course, the economic challenges in terms of the downturn. You talk about rising food prices. The financial constraints and the impact of same on your operations. Do you care to share with us, pre-pandemic, what was your budget, your total budget for the year? And what was your budget during the pandemic? And what efforts you made to really fill the gap as far as is practically possible so you can meet your objectives? What it was before the pandemic in 2019, what it was during the pandemic, and what efforts you made to close the gap so that you can realize your objectives in catering for all the categories that you earlier outlined: ECC centers, primary school, secondary school, technical and vocational, and special needs. Could you share with us?
Yes, Chair. So pre-pandemic, we would have been looking at about $200 million in terms of our budgetary allocation. In the pandemic, of course, because 94% of our budget goes into the provision of meals, we would not have had a budgetary constraint as such. However, our other objectives that I want to speak to is things like agriculture. Because we would have been on that downturn, what we would have looked at is increasing the agriculture output. And increasing the agriculture output is really planning for the return of the schools and the children to the schools. So what we did in that downtime with the reduction in budget, we did not really look at wasting resources. We had our staff. We did two things with them: retraining all staff at kitchens. Three things actually: retraining all staff at kitchens. In addition to which, we visited 700 farms. What we wanted to look at is coming back out of the pandemic. Well, we realized that in the pandemic, we would have, if we could no longer import, the program would have been in trouble, because to provide for 134,000 children without having the local input and the local resources to provide meals, definitely we would have been challenged, because we do not provide everything for those meals. So what we did, we went out through the help of Ministry of Agriculture and NAMDEFCO, we went out to farms, of course, following all protocols, because, the farms is one farmer, not crowding and that kind of thing. What we realized, we had about 10,000 acres of land that the farmers were actually willing to produce. So coming out of the pandemic, now not coming out, but going forward and providing meals, we now have a further 10,000 acres of land that we can now engage through the Ministry of Agriculture, through NAMDEFCO. We can now engage those farmers to provide some of those imported products. So we use the time to do that with the staff. And also we partnered with the Ministry of Health in doing contact tracing. They were retrained. The staff was actually retrained in a John Hopkins course to do contact tracing. So we assisted. We actually made about 21,000 calls to assist people as well, in the pandemic. But the main focus would have been on provision of meals, on providing food, local agriculture, increasing that input because one of our objectives is using as much local in our menu plan. And with the onset of the pandemic, if nothing we have learned is other than everything else, I mean, the main thing coming out of the pandemic is that we need to feed ourselves. So with that input and the 10,000 acres, what we realized is that we only had 5,000 acres under production for the school feeding program. So we had that further 10,000 capacity. And only in that downtime, you were able to send people, officers out to the farms to really engage the farmers with our objective in providing what we require and also engaging. For example, right now, peas, we don't provide peas. Peas is something that we import. Thousands of dollars we import in peas every year. So those are the initiatives that we would like in terms of getting those acreage under production. So that would have been
two final questions. One, what was the budget in 2020, 2021 for allocated to the school dietary services limited? It was 200 million, as you said, in 2019. What was it in 2020? And what was it in 2021? And what is it in 2022? Could you just give us that quickly?
$2020, 2021 is 41 million. In 2020, 200. In 2021, after 2020, 2021 would have been the 41 million.
So in 2020 in 2019 we got 200 million. In 2021 we got
would have been 224. Then 224, 200, and then we had 41 million.
All right. So let us get it clear. 2019, 2020, 200 million.
224 in 19.
Right. In 2020, 2021, how much?
In 2020, you would have had 200, and then 2021, you had 41 million.
In total?
Yeah.
Wow. And finally, what percentage of local input do you access through your caterers for the provision of meals, as opposed to the percentage of imported foodstuff or ingredients that go into the meals that are provided to our students, both at the EC center level, the primary, secondary, technical, vocational, etc. Could you share with us what percentage?
Chair, the percentage that we have out of our budget, well, the last year that we would have used, $10 million go back into local input in terms of farming the commodities. What we have as a percentage in terms of the boxes is about 30%, 25 to 30%. We have challenges in terms of adequate amounts, whether that is going to meet our needs in terms of timing. Sometimes we have floods, we have to pull because of fecal coliform and good agricultural practices. We have to look at food safety as well. But we try as much as possible to at least use 30% in our meal plan.
All right, thank you very much. I'll now invite my colleague Amrita Dietary, and then after Rushton Parry. Senator Amrita Dietary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning again, everyone. Now, I believe that the National Schools Dietary Services Limited provides an instrumental role to the population, especially to the vulnerable population, both on the beneficiary side in terms of the recipients of these meals, and also in terms of the unskilled labor that you all employ. I believe from looking at your submission, almost 80% of your employable labor force are women. Now, I know that earlier on you all alluded to two significant challenges. Those are financial constraints, and those financial constraints you all were experiencing since 2015, and also the challenge of rising food prices. Now, I didn't get clearly exactly what the response plan to deal with these rising food prices is going to be. And also, has an assessment been done to determine the impact on the cost per breakfast and per lunch due to the increasing food prices? So I will start with that question.
So thank you, Honorable Member. We have looked at the only solution is actually looking at the meal price in terms of increasing. And yes, we've tried to look at solutions in terms of looking at bulk discounts, looking at the volumes, but with the rise in food prices, 4% on chicken, as much as 10% on bakery items. There are certain things that is beyond our control now. So as a program, we have to look at an increase in the price per box. So nowhere, I think, in Trinidad right now, we can go and get a meal for $6.63 a breakfast that is that provides a quarter of the recommended dietary allowance. It is very, very difficult, and it is a big challenge when we look at the nutrients that we want to provide and what we can provide. And I'll give you just one example. For breakfast, we normally do a fruit. Right now, we had to cut the fruit out, which is, of course, in this time with the pandemic, you want children to have their immune system up and running. You want them as healthy as possible in terms of fighting COVID-19, if to ensure that they're safe. And with those challenges, with those financial constraints, we cannot provide what we want. So in terms of the solution, there could be only one solution in terms of increasing that price per meal. And when you're fair to both sides in terms of the caterers and the program, we of course going to get better value in terms of what is going to be provided, better quality. What we ask for the caterers to provide in terms of food safety is a lot. And then in terms of the pandemic as well, you had to increase in terms of the layout, making sure certain things happen. Training, you have a training component, you have temperature checks, and a lot of other checks and balances that you have to put in. And those, of course, come at a cost.
Thank you so much for your response. Now, I understand what you're saying, but given I saw that you all alluded to in your written responses that you all, in addition to the rising food prices, you all have the challenge of dealing with price gouging. How is that from suppliers? Am I correct?
We have approved suppliers on the list. We inspect those suppliers and we negotiate prices for the caterers. So we tend to go with the bulk. So although we are not doing the purchasing ourselves, we ensure that the prices are best in terms of what they would offer to the program.
Okay, so do you have an estimate yet the extent to which the price per meal would increase? Have those estimations been done?
When we looked at it, and we of course, we have to be mindful of all factors because the price, if we take the price of the meal up by $1, it costs the program $8 million more for the year. So the we will have to look at initial costs. And when we analyze the percentage increases, we were actually looking at $1.25 increase to start with.
Okay, so then with that being said, and also in response to one of the earlier questions to the chair in terms of the budgetary allocation, would that be sufficient to meet the supposed price increases that you all would have to foot the bill off going forward? And further, also, when I looked at your accounts, when I looked at the trade payables in the audited financial statements and in your written submission, I see that there is an ongoing balance that is owed to caterers within the vicinity of 52 million and 70 million in 2018. So how would this rise in the prices per lunch or per breakfast going to impact on your ability to clear the bill with the caterers or to pay all the bills to the caterers? Because right now there seems to be an ongoing balance.
Well, at this point, all bills were paid off. We have no, thank God, we have nothing owing to caterers, but it was in fact a difficult period where caterers used their finances to provide meals. We did in fact get releases late. Sometimes 3 to 6 months we were owing the caterers, but now we're back to paying on time, and releases have been on time. But of course, if we go back to normal feeding, where it costs the program over 25 million per month, it is out of our hands. We have to liaise with our line ministry and Ministry of Finance to be able to get that funds. And you're right, if we increase by $8 million, we will not have the budgetary allocation will not allow for the increase. We would have to, of course, ask for more money.
And have those discussions begun already?
Yes, they have begun, because we were in fact at the verge of issuing contracts, and we did do a short-term contract for the caterers because we had to look at, we could not lock caterers into $6.63 and $8.28 and $9 for meals. It is absolutely untenable in this time. So a review, the board has asked for a review and recommendations to follow, and we will take it to the relevant ministries.
Okay, thank you. Now, I want to move to the financial statements, and I saw that the 2020 financial statements are still outstanding, and I saw in your response, you all indicated that you all were awaiting the approval of the Ministry of Finance's date to have the annual general meeting. Was that sorted out?
Yes, and they were submitted, and the financials were submitted to the Ministry of Finance, and you should have gotten it as well. It was on the way to Parliament. And as a matter of fact, I could also report that our financials for this year, well, 2020, 2021 would have been completed as well. And we have a second draft in hand. So that will be, well, it would have been due on the 31st of January, but we're not too far. Today is the 2nd. So hopefully by the end of the month, it should be forwarded to the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Education.
Okay. All right. So another thing that struck me from the responses was that you all do not have an internal audit department, and an internal audit was not done for some time. Is that correct?
Well, the internal, because it was a small company, the org structure had the internal audit as a outsource. So we had an outsource in 2013, and then after that we had different aspects. We went out for an auditor, and the cost was high. So we actually had also, you'll see a report on the NSDSL committee. We had a NSDSL committee, and right now the risk in the organization because of the pandemic would have been production. So we have a Caterer audit. Caterer is conducting audit on the kitchens. So
right, 10% of the kitchens I saw.
Yeah.
Right, but in terms of the internal audit, the price was too high. Was any attempts made to, reach out to the Ministry of Finance or the line ministry to get additional allocation to meet that requirement to do the internal audit? Because I understand, as a compromise, what ended up happening is that the audit committee ended up doing a risk management control report. Is that correct?
Yes.
But I do not think that that is sufficient to fulfill the requirements that Ministry of Finance need. Could you comment on that?
So we would have been asking, of course, we liaise with the Ministry of Finance all the time. It's our corporation sole, and we would write on all these reports and let them understand. But of course, in view of the financial difficulties that we were having at that time, it was in fact a very big challenge and some of the sums when we went out, it was $150,000 for a 2 months audit and 3 months audit. Now, those prices have fallen in this time, and we are in fact in the process of going back out. The board, I know, will address that issue in going back out and ensuring that we have the internal auditor after Caterer is finished with the production audit.
Okay, so when Caterer will be finished with the 10% of kitchens audit, and when does the board of directors intend to go out to resolve this internal audit situation?
So the Caterer is already finished with 50%, and they will complete at the end of March. At the end of this term, they intend to complete that report. And well, the board is considering, and maybe I should allow Ms. Corbett.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam CEO and Honorable Member. We have been looking at the entire org chart, and we realize the importance of the internal auditor. And I agree with you that we need to resolve this. So we have been in discussion with CEO as it relates to this position. And I know we have spoken about Caterer and the fact that they have started, the process of auditing, some of the kitchens, but we have stressed the need to go out there and get an internal auditor. We know finance is a problem, but we really have to make representation for the adequate finance for the internal auditor. And I know we have other positions on the org structure that we need to deal with and fulfill. And what has happened, I know even before we came in as a board, there was a proposal for a new structure also to the company. So we have been reviewing that, and we have been, making suggestions, and we are hopeful that soon we will be able to resolve this issue.
Okay, thank you. So is there anybody present here today who could give me some ideas, the timeline as to having this decision of an in-house internal auditor be present or hired?
Can I direct that question to the Ministry of Education, seeing that this company falls under its direct remit? And then maybe we can get a view from the Ministry of Finance Investments Division, please.
Okay, well, there are two issues. The first issue is, in spite of their outsourcing of their internal audit function, they have had positive external audit reports. The second issue is that I know for a fact that the National Schools Dietary Company is not the only company that outsources the internal audit function, because it is an expensive resource to get. It's really a matter of risk. If there is definitely a risk, you would probably need to have one, but they have external auditors, and at the end of the day, Auditor General still provides you oversight. We will, if the financial situation improves, I definitely think full-time in-house resource is probably the best case scenario. But again, we are in difficult financial times. And when you're in difficult financial times, you have to make some creative decisions. Not creative to put the company at risk, but creative in terms of saving the money to the taxpayer. Ministry of Finance probably would have a view.
Acting Permanent Secretary, could you share, based on my colleague's question, have the ministry done a proper cost-benefit analysis as it relates to, would it be cheaper to have established in this company that has been in existence for over a decade now, to have an internal audit department or unit as opposed to outsourcing this particular function? And as I'm on that, may I ask, what is the name of the company that has been engaged to conduct this particular audit? And what is the cost to the taxpayers of this outsourcing to this particular company that is doing this job, and for how long that has been done? Could you share with us your thinking on this matter?
Salaries for an internal auditor, qualified internal auditor, probably would be slightly more than the outsource, but that would be old prices. I'm not sure what the current prices would be right now.
No, Mr. Myers, I'm asking whether the ministry has done any technical study to guide it in its determination that it should outsource the auditing function of this company. Is there any paper, any analysis that you can share with this committee as to why that particular approach was taken as opposed to establishing an internal audit unit? That is the point I'm trying to clarify.
The answer to the question is no.
Can you then tell us which company is doing this particular work of auditing over the last few years for this important company called the National Schools Dietary Services Company Limited?
Ms. Barron, do you have the name?
Yes, Chair. The cost for Caterer is $5,000 per kitchen, so it would have been a total cost of $20,000. The reason for the outsource is because at the time of the analysis, when the org structure was done, it did the structure because of the limited transactions, they did not see the need to have a permanent auditor on staff. It was really a cost-saving exercise, but it did not turn out that way, because when you outsource, the outsource comes at a big cost as well.
Mrs. Barron, can you tell us what is the total cost on an annual basis for outsourcing the auditing function?
So the cost of the auditing function for the external auditor is $70,000. That's external audit.
How much? Could you repeat?
$70,000 for the external audit. And the internal audit that we're doing right now with Caterer is $20,000.
So $20,000 annually to Caterer for the outsourcing, right? In terms of the internal.
Yes.
And could you tell us how many years Caterer has been doing this function, the internal auditing function on behalf?
This is the first year, Chair.
So who was doing it before?
No, not the production audit. This is the first time we're doing the production audit by Caterer.
So over the years, you have done no internal auditing function at this company. Is that true?
Well, Chair, we have the NSDSL committee, which is the Ministry of Education, through a cabinet minute has actually, that report is here. The NSDSL committee did in fact do some auditing. So in light of that and the recommendations, we had held on doing the internal auditor, but we are in the process of recruiting. The board will recruit the internal auditor soon.
You said you're in the process. What could you share with this committee a timeline? What is the timeline for ensuring that this particular unit is established? And may I ask Mr. Myers to also indicate us, working with you, what time frame collectively you all are working towards as it relates to the establishment of an internal audit unit?
So, Chair, we can look at if Caterer finishes their audit in March, we can engage in March to start to look at quotations, and I would say by April we should have an internal auditor on board.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we are confusing something here. There are two different aspects of the internal audit that is being undertaken or should be undertaken. Right now, we have the production audit that is being undertaken by Caterer, which is the 10% of the kitchens. And then there's the issue of the internal audit with respect to that, which is a financial audit. Now, our questions are mostly directed towards the financial audit right now, right? And I'm trying to understand that, is it that the decision has not yet been made to hire internally for an internal audit department? Or is it that we are saying that the cost of contracting an auditor, outsourcing an auditor to do the internal audit function is costing us between $95,000 to $500,000 based on the quotes that you all have submitted in the written submission? So which one is it? Is it that it's too expensive and we're just not going to do it? Or is it that we are in discussions to hire someone to conduct the internal audit function? Could somebody clarify that for me, please?
We are in discussions and we want to go. These quotes were old quotes. So of course we're hoping to get better quotations with people unemployed as well. I think we can get somebody cheaper. So that is, we are committed to hiring an internal auditor, and it will be done, of course, at a cheaper cost.
Right. Now, I am only pressing on this because I heard the PS in the Ministry of Education. Says that it depends on the risk in order to hire the internal audit as a role or as a unit in the organization itself. But the role of the internal auditor or an internal audit is to assess risk. And based on the risk management control document that I saw you all provided, it does not clearly ascertain or identify, assess, mitigate the risks of NSDSL. So I think this is something that is very critical, and it is an oversight that can lead you all into problems later on. And further to that, the Ministry of Finance in their submission, Investments Division, I saw that they indicated that to the question, and I shall read the question, what is the process used by the Permanent Secretary to measure outcomes, evaluate performance, and value for money? And one of the things listed in the response was the internal audit reports. And from my understanding from this discussion here, there has been no internal audit report. Am I correct? Could somebody clarify?
Yes.
Can I respond, CEO? Because the issue is that since the board came in, we have been reviewing, how the National Dietary Services carry out the function, and we have been looking at these same queries that you are bringing up, which pertains to the internal audit, which we also see as an important part. And we have been working with the CEO up to the last meeting that we had. We discussed the fact that we need to get, a listing of all the positions that we have to send out, to let people bid for, because the issue is that we need to fill these important positions. And we hold to that also, and we are committed to ensuring that that happens. So I thank you for bringing up that exercise. That's very important.
All right. Mrs. Amrita, I think that I want to come in at this point to just again support your submission. This company was born on the 3rd of July, 2002. This is over 20 years of existence. And this company does not have an internal audit unit. That is unacceptable. That cannot be defended. On the one hand, we are being told by the CEO that there's need for us to establish such a unit, and they are going to explore rapidly that particular objective. And then on the other hand, we are being told by the acting permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education that there is no need, or I get the impression that there is no urgency in establishing this internal audit function. I don't know if we are talking at cross purposes, but I would like to say on behalf of this committee that we would like to give this company a minimum of 3 months to report to this committee that you have taken steps to advertise and to ensure that an internal audit unit is established. That situation of 20 years of the non-existence of an internal audit function, given all that Senator Dietary has stated with the risk management function, can no longer be tolerated. And therefore, on behalf of this committee, we will be writing to the chairman, writing to the permanent secretary, writing to the Ministry of Finance Investment Division, giving these 3 bodies a minimum of 3 months to establish an internal audit function. I think that we will no longer be going around in circles on this matter. This is unacceptable and this is indefensible. And I will just, Senator Dietary, if you give me 2 seconds of your time, I will just want to demonstrate again the dangers of the absence of an internal audit function, and the risk management associated therein. We have a situation where this company, the NSDSL, employed PricewaterhouseCoopers to develop what is called a strategic plan for the period 2020 to 2022. This company, accounting firm, charges company, the National Schools Dietary Services Company Limited, some $107,831 for this development strategic plan for the period 2018 to 2020. When the plan was completed and this company received its monies, the School Dietary Services Company discovered that PricewaterhouseCoopers left out what is called some key performance indicators, which are critical elements that are required in this plan. So what happened? The School Dietary Company had to re-engage PricewaterhouseCoopers to incorporate the key performance indicators, which were not included in the initial strategic plan at an additional cost of $46,726.88. So you have to understand what is taking place here. We paid $107,000 for a plan. PricewaterhouseCoopers was supposed to establish in that plan key performance indicators. That was left out. And then we now have to pay $46,000 to rehire PricewaterhouseCoopers to incorporate key performance indicators, which were supposed to be incorporated in the original strategic plan. Now, what is going on here? Mrs. Barron, Mrs. Corbett, and the acting permanent secretary, could you explain this conundrum that has visited this company? Please, we need clarification. Mrs. Barron, firstly, Mrs. Corbett, secondly, and the acting permanent secretary, thirdly, please. There is taxpayers' dollars involved here.
In the strategic plan, we had an outline, broad key performance indicators. We had to, which was delivered. What we had to do coming out of reviewing that, we had to draw down to do actually the key performance indicators with regard to the different departments, and that is what the drawdown is. So they would have done the strat plan with the general key performance indicators, but to get to the different departments and the different functions, that is what it would have been in terms of the key performance indicators, that additional fee.
I really do not understand your submission. I do not agree with what you have told us, but we will have to deal with this at the report level. This is unacceptable, what has happened here, but I will return the proceedings back to Mrs. Amrita Dietary because I borrowed some of her time. I would like to ask her to resume her investigation and inquiry. Senator Dietary, and then after, Senator the Honorable Rushton Parry.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask one more question on this internal audit, and then I will hand over to the other member Parry. And that one question is with respect to Investments Division and Ministry of Finance. I didn't hear their take on this. How is the lack of or the non-existence of internal audit reports has been affecting their ability to perform their functions of monitoring the state enterprise according to the State Enterprise Performance Monitoring Manual?
Ministry of Finance Investment Division, may I have your input?
Yes. Through you, Chair, the Ministry of Finance is in support of an internal audit function, and we have conveyed this to the company on other occasions. And we encourage them, we continue to encourage them to establish this internal audit function. And we will like them to do that.
Could you outline, Madam, on how many previous occasions and why you would like to submit it was not done, and what was done by your investment division to ensure that that was done by collaborating with the Ministry of Education as well as the company, please, on how many occasions you would have written to them, and could you supply us with those pieces of correspondences?
Okay, sure. So we would have sent out a circular in April 2020, and that was sent out to national school directories together with all state entities. This was also circulated to all the ministries. So that's one step. And we also sent another letter to the company later on. We'll send copies of those correspondence. Again, asking them that they establish this internal audit function.
Yes, but ma'am, you would know that this company was established since 2002. So it's 20 years now without an internal audit function. Can you tell me if there are records at the Ministry of Finance that would have at least advised this company that they should in fact have established in their operations this vital unit in terms of internal audit functions? Can you advise us what happened between 2002 to your letter of 2020? Were there many letters? And could you give us the dates of them? And could you supply us with copies of those correspondences, please?
We will look into our records, Chair, and we'll provide that to you in writing.
Thank you so very much. Amrita, continue, and then after we'll go to Rushton.
Chair, I want to go into looking at the accounts receivables and the fact that we don't have a debt recovery policy. But however, I would like to pause at this point and allow Member Parry to come in because I believe he has some interesting interventions to make with regards to the recommendations of the previous report. Is that okay?
Yes, Mr. Rushton Parry, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning again to everyone. I just want to start with two comments. Now, I've been sitting on these GSCs for over 6 years, and it is very concerning when I hear issues surrounding that. There is no money, there is an issue of funding, and yet it seems that we can spend money to taste all kind of things in this country, but put some money to assist the caterers in getting $1 extra to improve the quality of the meals, or to put some money for an internal auditor. I am extremely concerned about that. The other thing that I am concerned about is that I've heard the investment division on several of these GSC investigations, and clearly that unit it seems to me, Mr. Chairman, that it is a toothless bulldog, because I keep hearing that they can only advise and encourage, but no instructive powers at the end of the day. Because you have all these issues happening in these state enterprises, and yet the investment division can't seem to give an instruction to do something. So that's the two comments that I have that I want to register on the record. I think these things must be addressed in the report, Mr. Chairman. Before I touch a couple of the issues on the recommendations that were made in May of 2018, in my preparation for this investigation, in the constituency that I represent, I reached out to quite a few of the school principals and teachers and some of the PTAs to find out about issues that they would have had with the school feeding program over the years. And there are a couple that jumped out at me, and I would like the CEO to perhaps comment on these with a few questions that I would have. Issues around in the late arrival of the meals. Meals that they felt that were underprepared, undercooked. There are several cases where issues of hair and other impurities were found in the food. Transportation of the food, sometimes it reached in a collapsed state, containers being thrown left and right. There was concerns about some of the meals where the sugar content was extremely high. Now, based on these issues, is there a mechanism that is in place where complaints or concerns on the delivery and the quality of meals that are coming into the school system, is there a process where complaints are registered by the principals to your organization? And what is the methodology used to address those concerns? That's the first question.
Yes, Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you. What we have is we have our officers going into the schools, and we have a report and visit form that they fill out. That form, they also monitor meals. Of course, it's a challenge because of the pandemic to interact with children now, but they have those forms they fill out, and they take they bring those complaints in. we deal with the caterers. I'm very disheartened because I know that we try our best in terms of standards and their procedures. If a hair is found which they wear their hairnets, and we try to do as much as possible to avoid any contaminants in the meals. We also do the microbial testing. But anyway, we have the school visit forms being filled out. We take that in and we address the caterer immediately. If the caterer is found to be guilty of doing or practices that are not in compliance with, we have a caterer's manual. We retrain, and it could also lead to suspension. So we do in fact take immediate action. Every complaint is dealt with also through the Ministry of Education. Well, I know CEO might want to address that, but through the Ministry of Education, the principal will also take that matter up with the school supervisor. So we have two lines of communication to ensure that transparency and to ensure that we deal with the matter on both ends.
CEO, by chance, do you create or do you prepare like an annual report or an annual summary of all of these issues that come up as a reporting mechanism that is used to measure the performance of your caterers or specific caterers? Do you have any system in place for that?
Yes, we have.
Yes, Madam CEO, your camera is off. We are not seeing your face.
Sorry.
Can you put on your camera? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Yes. So yes, honorable member, we have, we do in fact record. We prepare monthly reports in terms of what transpires at each caterer. So those are the records are there. The report visit forms are there, and to the ministry on a monthly basis, we do in fact provide a report to the Chief Education Officer.
By chance, does the Ministry of Health play any role in terms of the auditing of the quality of the meals and so on?
Yes, the Ministry of Health, well, of course, because it's a food establishment, the Ministry of Health has to pass all food establishments. So we start with the certificate of inspection done by the Ministry of Health, and they also issue, nobody is allowed to work in a kitchen without a food badge. So they also do that. In addition to which, they visit the kitchens termly. They, when their lab was up and running, they used to take samples as well, but we now take samples through the food lab, both the vet lab and the and we do the microbial testing to ensure. Also, we have Lumi testers that we use to swab services. We keep samples as well of meals for 72 hours refrigerated in the event that we should have an allegation from a school if a child should get sick or anything of that nature.
Have there been any cases that you would have had to attend to with regards to, any issues around health over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of testing that would have been done by the ministry? Have you encountered any of those and any actions taken against caterers?
No, we would not have had any issues in terms of children getting sick. But what we would have is the when we do sampling of meals, sometimes you would get like an aerobic count being high. Aerobic count don't mean that the child will get sick, but we would flag immediately, because what that would say is that we have the establishments being closed. There's some breach, so we do the retraining, and so we try to use those measures to kind of strengthen the system. So we continuously strengthen.
I just want to go back to a question that was asked earlier on concerning, and you raised some matters of agriculture and the fact that you had 10,000 acres that can go into productive capacity through some mechanisms. Is there a formal arrangement between your organization and NAMDEFCO to provide supplies to your caterers at fixed prices? Is there any formal arrangement at this time?
No, honorable member, but there's a facilitation. what we try to do is to work with the certified farms from NAMDEFCO. We try to, because one of our major problems is when sometimes we don't use fresh produce at all in the meal plan, as in salads and lettuce and those things, because what we find is when we do the microbial analysis, we tend to get fecal coliform. So the fecal coliform, of course, could get the children sick. We need better agricultural practices, good agricultural practices. So what we try to do is to work with NAMDEFCO for them to identify the certified farms and work through those certified farms where the caterers can get their produce. But what we're trying to aim at, that's why we went out to the 700 farms, is to see if we can get a caterer to farm approach where the communities can be self-sustained, and in their community, they can get the farmers to work with them. What we do as well, honorable member, we try to give projections to farmers. So if the farmer wants to work with us, they can, in fact, they get if we're doing, for example, we do 120,000 pounds of body for the year. So if they want to project and say, well, okay, I could provide 2% of that for your population, we are, in fact, working with them or through NAMDEFCO. But there's no...
Sure, but don't you think, in terms of the fact that NAMDEFCO has, and I think they've done a pretty good job over the last few months in terms of the veggie hamper project that they were doing. But the fact that NAMDEFCO has, or to my understanding, they have some set clear guideline for the processing of these vegetables, the packaging, quality standards and so on. And I suspect that they hold rigorous to these things with the farmers that are bringing it in. Won't you think an arrangement with NAMDEFCO would really enhance, one, the quality and the quantity, the consistency of the product that you can get to your caterers as a single shop operation? Take that headache out of your caterers who are already operating at $8 and $9. I mean, you could get doubles for about $8 now. But that NAMDEFCO arrangement, is it something that you all have thought about in terms of firming up with the caterers? Or do you see any benefit if you were to pursue that line rather than have every caterer dealing with a farmer and you have inconsistencies in the quality, in the processing and packaging of the item to get to the caterers? Shop, any conversation around that?
We did, in fact, a few years ago, have a formal relationship with NAMDEFCO, and then because of profitability, I don't want to speak for NAMDEFCO, but their board had made a decision not to continue. So because one aspect of the procuring of these goods and services is the credit line. And of course, with NAMDEFCO, you will not have, caterers getting that kind of that provision. So I know that was one of the issues there. If we pay on time, that will not become an issue, of course, but, we can't assure that all the time we would be, on top of our payment to the caterers. But that would be best if we form.
Yeah, I think so. And I really feel that you could revisit back NAMDEFCO again, because the organization is catered for that. And if they have issues on their side in delivering, I think it's something that is worth exploring. I want to jump straight in, Madam Chairman and Madam CEO. In 2018, when last you were before us, there were 6 critical recommendations that were made. And I want to just probably go back through them very, very quickly in terms of to see what has been done. I know it's a new board. I think I heard Chairman said that since coming in, you are still in the mode of trying to grapple to find out a lot of these areas, what is missing and what can be done. But if I were to turn your attention to item number 1, in terms of our recommendation, there was a requirement that we asked that the program should be addressed by the Ministry of Education to deal with the inconsistent criteria used across schools in determining the participation list for students in the school feeding program. Have any progress been made in terms of firming up a specialized criteria for students to get onto the school feeding list? Have any work been done on that?
Yes, actually, through the NSDSL committee and as the National Schools Dietary Services Evaluation Committee, chaired by the Chief Education Officer, we would have worked on a criteria. It's a form that we would have developed in that committee, and it was actually taken in by cabinet minute and a steering committee set up to have that. So now the parents, now the principals use that form. I don't know if CEO want to elaborate a little further. I'll allow.
Mr. Parry, are you through?
No, we're waiting for a response from the acting permanent sec, I think. Minister of
Okay. Yeah, acting permanent secretary?
No, I think that's the CEO. If she can please respond.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll call the CEO. Can you respond to the question?
Good day, Chairman, members, colleagues. With respect to the criteria for selection of the children, a form has been developed and has been in existence since that committee would have been in force in 2018. And the form looks at information such as the religious, the child's religion, because of course, depending on your religion, it will influence your dietary choices. Whether the children have any lifestyle diseases or diseases such as diabetes or high blood pressure, which would also influence the content of the meal served, and whether there are any allergies, whether they are vegetarian, and so. And we look at the occupation of the parent or guardian of the child, the number of persons within the household, whether they are in receive of any social welfare benefits, and that information is taken into consideration in selecting persons for the service. As well, between the time that committee was established and now, one of the things that would have been done we would have regularized across the school types the way in which meals were provided. So, for example, at the previous to that committee, at the early childhood level, all students were provided with meals, and we would have changed that to mirror what happens at the primary and secondary schools, so that only persons who require this service would be provided with meals. And so that the form that I spoke to previously would be in use. And this is how we seek to select the children, trying to ensure that all those persons who are most in need are in receipt of meals.
Thank you very much, CEO. Following up on that, the second recommendation from that 2018 committee, it had suggested that perhaps the NSDSL look at for students who parents may be able to afford a bit or to have a partial payment for the meal. Was that given any consideration, or is that in force at this time?
That is not in force at this time. And in time to come, maybe we would have to meet and see what is possible in terms of instituting a program such as that. It has been one of the things for many years that the ministry and the NSDSL would have liked to do, but we have not at this time been able to institute that.
Okay, thank you. In item 4 on the recommendation list, there was a proposal that the school-based nutrition education program, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, to provide information in terms of dietary requirements and an increased acceptance of the meals prepared using local agricultural content. But I saw from the 2019 report, over 1.8 million pounds of vegetables, locally procured vegetables, have been in use since in 2019. So, and I spoke on the issue of NAMDEFCO being in a partnership in terms of getting the best quality of product at the end of the day. what I just want to ask of this is, I know there is a focus for the dietary NSDSL to look specifically at the required daily nutrients for the meals and so on. But yet in cafeterias in a lot of these schools, there is no control in terms of issues around the sugar content and so on of items. And I mean, you can see today the issue of obesity amongst our youngsters at the primary school level. Is there any consideration to have some sort of synergy in terms of planning between, getting the nutritional and the dietary requirements policies into the cafeterias of these schools? Has it been considered? Has it been done so far? I mean, we're in 2022. This was in 2018. Anything has been done in that area so far, CEO?
What has been done that I'm aware of, a circular had been sent out some time ago with respect to the reduction in the use of sugary drinks, and so that soft drinks, for example, are not supposed to be sold in cafeterias. They were supposed to be using fruit-sweetened beverages as opposed to sugar-sweetened beverages, and reduction on in terms of the full milk drinks. And this has been enforced for some time, for quite some time.
So there has been some improvement in terms of what's available.
Some improvement, yes.
Item 5 on that. Item 5 on the recommendation list. There was a recommendation to put some sort of online monitoring system where the quality and quantity of meals that is provided by the NSDSL can be monitored, recording of critical incidents, any sort of foodborne illnesses and so on. Anything was done in terms of having some sort of online system where the data can be retrieved and acted on immediately?
Okay, so what we have currently is a system whereby it's more or less a manual system. We record it. So, for example, I can tell you the number of meals that were provided on a daily basis over the past month. But that is collected from the schools manually. The ministry is in the process of establishing its school management system, that is management information system that records a lot of different categories of school data, one of which will be the school feeding incidents, if any. But as it stands currently, any such incidents are reported immediately through the line of communication from the principal to the supervisor and to the head office of the ministry, so that there is very short lag time if anything were to occur between the occurrence and the information being sent to the central ministry.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I have one more question I would like to direct to the dietary agency, the CEO there. CEO, I noticed in your submission on table 4, page 10, you have a table with from October 2019 to August 2020 in terms of the total spend for local commodity usage, which is accounting for $7.4 million. But I noticed that less than 5% of it goes into fruits. And taking note of the dietary requirements for children and so on and the importance of fruits, I was wondering why such a low quantity of fruits are part of the meal system. Because you're looking out of 7.4 million, less than $300,000 was spent on the acquisition of fruits for 2019-2020. What would account for that in terms of is it the availability of the fruits, or it just didn't form part of the meal plans?
I remember there were 2 reasons. 1, availability, and 2, the cost. Because oranges, some of the fruits that we serve, we would normally serve are Portugal's oranges. We used to serve watermelon. Now, watermelon is available, but we had to come up with a system where we could not break the cold chain. And what we found happening is when we put it in, we used to use these plastic bags and do a wedge to the child. If the child consume immediately, we chill, they consume immediately, we have no problems. But they used to keep it, and we found spoilage there. So we had to remove watermelon as part of it. And what we were using is bananas. And of course, the bananas are not produced in the country. They're imported. So we have a challenge in terms of fruits, availability, and cost.
Again, any consideration of putting something in place through NAMDEFCO and their list of farmers in terms of the provision of these fruits and so on? I'm sorry I'm harping on the issue of NAMDEFCO because as a state agency themselves, they have a mandate to be the collection and supplier and to test quality and so on. And your agency, which is doing such a fantastic job, an important job, you need their support. I would even go so far to even ask, you already have 60, 70 caterers in place doing meals. In order to assist your caterers remain viable, why haven't even the ministries considered using your caterers to provide meals for ministries, for state agencies, for functions and so on? So it can keep your caterers going even in this controlled return back to school as well. So I really feel that, your unit ought to reach out to line ministers in those various ministry, state agencies and see how they can assist you keep your caterers on board. Because if your caterers start dropping on the side, it's going to put more pressure to get meals into the schools. And I suspect as, the COVID-19, hopefully we pray that it gets under some sort of control later in this year, towards the end of the year, we need to get kids back out to school. That is so critical now. And your organization need to really cross the T's, dot the I's now while we're in just a ramping up phase to see if we can get those things addressed going forward into 2023 as hopefully schools can resume and kids can go back out into a proper learning environment. Chairman, that's it for me.
Thank you. May I invite Senator Amrita Dionoran? I think she wanted to raise a few points.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again, members. So I'm looking at your written submission on page 19, and I am seeing that we have accounts receivable, a total of 1.8 million in 2019, averaging 2 million in 2016 and 1.8 million between 2017 to 2019. And these accounts receivables, I understand, comes from debts owed from the Ministry of Education, the ODPM, Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Office of the Prime Minister. Where are we with these?
So we would have tried to recover, and as the last honorable member would have indicated, we would have tried to get some revenue for the caterers from other ministries, and of course to provide local. This was all the local initiative. The Office of the Prime Minister, we would have done two functions, a big local function to promote the use of local. And this is where, so we would have had the ODPM. We were partnering with the ODPM. We were part of the whole national emergency plan. And when the floods happened in 2012, we were asked to provide meals. So we provided the meals, and we were not paid for those meals because it was understood that we were part of it, and we would have things. So there's a risk when we actually do service and work for ministries, because when they don't pay, the issue is you are left with the liability. And of course, who do we take? We can't take any action. We try to recover. We write letters. We go and we make representation. The Ministry of Education work very closely with us. We work with them in terms of provision of meals for functions, for, in terms of they prefer to deal with somebody who is providing a low-cost meal, a safe meal, and, so we try to do that service. Sometimes the money is in, and that is where we are with that issue.
Okay, so tell me something. What exactly, other than calling, following up, and whatnot, what were some of the reasons for not meeting the liability from these ministries So like from the office of the Prime Minister, I understand the ODPM, they thought it was a donation on your part. So they did not, their understanding was that, you all were not supposed to be paid for it. But with respect to Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago, OPM, and even Ministry of Education is here, what is the reason for non-payment or meeting of these liabilities on their part?
When we write letters, everybody promised to look at it and take action. But remember, staff change. So basically, the current staff, they are unaware in terms of where, so it starts over again in terms of going back to find who would have been there. And that is where we are in terms of, going forward with those debts. But we continue to in fact pursue.
So then therefore no solid reasons were given in terms of, it's just a matter of the document trail getting lost and nobody is keeping track of it and monitoring the obligations. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and staff changing, yeah.
Okay, all right. So with respect to, did you provide a breakdown of each one of these ministries, how much they are owing?
Yes, we did provide.
Could you just remind me of it? I can't pinpoint it right now.
Page 20. Page 20.
No, it's not on page 20 of the written submission. I mean, how much does Ministry of Education owe? How much does Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago owe? Okay, I found it. It's on page 18. All right. Okay, so the intention is to write off these make provisions for these and write them off in the books.
Yes,
is that the intention?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to go back to an earlier issue that was raised very early on by the chair with respect to the grants that were received by the caterers, right? Now, I know that you all worked with the Ministry of Finance and the caterers to ensure that a lot of the workers or the employees of the caterers received these grants. However, I understand from your submission that not everyone were able to access these grants. What were some of the reasons why these persons weren't able to access these grants from the first lockdown in 2020?
Honorable Member, let me just clarify, it's not for the caterers, it's for the staff. That would
yes,
have been
staff.
the grant,
yes.
Yeah, for the staff.
Yes, for the staff that they hire, yes.
Yeah. So, no, I know some people were given, some people were actually, some businesses our catering facilities did not get that assistance, but they got it through their staff. Some of the records, when we got the breakdown from the Ministry of Finance, and I said they worked very closely with us in following up with those lists. We submitted the list for the caterers as well. And what we realized is that they had wrong information being submitted. They had wrong phone numbers submitted as well. So when they tried to communicate, they were not able to communicate. So through communication with the Ministry of Finance, we were able to access. So at first we had about 50-something%. And then when we made those calls and we accessed the people, then some people had to resubmit, and some people did in fact get the grant. So we were up to to over 80%. So it did in fact work out quite well, and we must thank Ministry of Finance for working with us.
Okay, I'm glad that worked out. Now, with respect to, I see that for the period 2015 to 2019, on page 24 of your submissions, you all indicated that you all had some suppliers that you all were still owing. I know earlier on you said that those debts were taken care of. What is the current debt of NSDSL?
We have no
debts at this point. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Chair, I would pause here.
Thank you so very much. May I continue? And I would like to ask the CEO. You mentioned earlier on an external auditor that you had engaged. CEO, are you hearing me? Madam CEO?
Yes, Chairman.
Can you identify the name of this external auditor?
This external auditor is PKF, and they have been approved by the Ministry of Finance for our external audits. So each AGM we have, we submit the name and they approve the auditor.
All right, thank you. Now, can you also justify why it is the company, your company that is, would want to write off these outstanding monies that are owed by the sports company, UWI, Ministry of Health, National Security, PAHO, the Ministry of Education, for the period 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. What's the reason you all are thinking of writing off these sums that are outstanding? And they're not huge amounts. So I'm trying to understand why you all would want to write off these sums.
But Chair, that was the recommendation by the auditor. We continue to seek, of course, we will try to recover every dollar that is outside the company. So we continue to make representation in terms of having these sums paid. The sports company in Trinidad and Tobago has paid their bill. So you would see the 1.8 going down to 1.6 in 2016-17, and 2017 to 2018 you would have a going up from the Ministry of Education, and then 2018 to 19 you'd have it fallen again because you would have the payments, some payments coming in. So the only outstanding payments there now would be the ODPM and the Office of the Prime Minister, and very little from the Ministry of Education, but they have also been attempting, they have been making their payments. So it is a recommendation from the auditor, the external auditor, but we can continue to make those representation and get the monies.
Yeah, okay, thank you. On page 26 of your submission, under the procurement and accounting manual section, it was noted that your company was responsible for the creation and updating of several manuals, and that they would typically, and these are rather manuals were outsourced, right? To an external consulting firm. Would you be kind enough to share with us the name of this consulting firm utilized for this project and the cost of contracting said firm?
Well, the procurement and accounting manual was formed in 2007 when the company was set up in basically for the setup documents of the company. After that, in 2011, what we really use is the state enterprise performance monitoring manual, those guidelines. We have not been updating this procurement and accounting manual. When this was set up in 2007, I'm not sure what the cost would have been, but the accounting and procurement manual was in fact done by PwC.
PwC, okay. You have any idea what would have been the cost?
I'm not sure, but I could look back and I could send that that through to you, but in 2007, that would have been the, they would have done the work for the setup of the company.
Do you have the internal capacity to continue on your own this work, or you, in terms of updating these manuals?
Well, Chair, we are working closely with the Office of the Procurement Regulator, and I think once we continue working closely with them. They have samples of handbooks, and they have been doing training. They've been training our staff. I think we can, in fact, do that work on our own. So I don't see the update being, that we have to outsource that.
Could you share with us what has been the relationship between the Procurement Regulation Office and this company called the National School Dietary Services Company Limited? Have you been complying with the requests made by the procurement regulation?
Well, Chair, we have been going to all their training programs, and they actually are a very good group of people. They work with us continuously. They have been giving us guidelines. I actually, it's quite a good relationship that we have, and they lend the support that we need. Actually, when we went out recently for the caterers contracts, the Office of the Procurement Regulator, they were the ones who did in fact review the protocol for award of contracts for the caterers. So we work hand in hand, Chairman, Mr. Lalchon, and myself and our board. So that relationship, is, we hope that continues, because, it is quite rewarding for the company.
Thank you. And now the risk assessment is a critical part of the health and safety culture. And therefore, technical advice is also received from external consultants throughout the process, according to your submission on page 9. Could you provide this committee with a full list of all consultants utilized by the NSDSL? And could you include a cost for enlisting their services, as well as the purpose for recruitment?
Yes, Chair. I can submit. I'll do the submission.
Yeah, right. So you'll be able to submit that in writing, right?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Now I saw something about some vehicle on page 30 of your submission, I think. Do you have a instrument guiding the purchase and disposal of vehicles acquired by the company? Do you have a policy document or instrument that would be guiding both the purchasing and disposal of vehicles of your company?
Yes, Chair. We use the State Enterprise Monitoring Manual and our Finance and Accounting Manual.
Now, you also stated on page 31 that there was one vehicle which is currently owned by the company. And this vehicle number has been given as a BMW 361 sedan. It was purchased in 2013. Could you indicate the rationale for the purchase of this vehicle then?
That is the vehicle that is allocated to the CEO, the office of the CEO.
Okay. And on page 31, could you share with us what mechanisms were used to determine the selection of the NSDSL's security service provider? What mechanisms were employed, as far as you are aware, in terms of, do you tender for these things? And what was the process involved in tendering? Was it sole select? Was it competitive? And could you also provide us with the name of the security service provider? Is it MTS, or is it a private security organization?
When this was a provider that came into many years ago, and we had amalgamated first, three-code system, and then we, because of the problems that was encountered, I think the CEO then would have gone back out for codes and would have changed to Kygel Services Limited.
Okay. All right. I think that there are some other areas that we will have to write to you on, because we have another meeting starting in a short while. So we wouldn't want to breach or at least in any way hamper the upcoming meeting because of a time constraint. So I think it's a good time for us to pause and to get from the various leaders who are here just a brief closing comment, because we are about to draw the curtains on our inquiry today. As I said, there are some questions that, because of time, we may not be able to pursue, but we will put in writing those questions that we are unable to put forward to you at this time. But unless my colleagues, both Rushton Parry, as well as Senator Amrita Dino Ryan, if they have any further questions they would like to raise at this time, you may do so. Yes.
I just have one question that I'd like to ask the Ministry of Education. Is there any consideration of revisiting the unit cost for meals anytime soon? Because at $8 and $9, I can't see it working for the caterers to maintain the safety protocols that are going to be required going forward. I suspect perhaps a bit of the lapses that happens because of the minimal cost that they have to operate on may be causing some of the issues that I raised before. Does the ministry have any intention to revisit that cost per unit anytime in the near future?
As the CEO said, there is an intention to look at the costs of the unit costs of the meals.
Any time frame?
I think the CEO said the new contracts would take into account that cost. We also have to note that the Ministry of Education, the National School Dietary Company, is a small consumer of our total agricultural products that are manufactured locally. If that market increases, the unit costs would go down.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Roshan Parry?
That's it, Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, well, may I, in bringing these proceedings to a close, just remind the Ministry of Education, the company, National School Dietary Services Company Limited, and the Ministry of Finance Investments Division of the urgency of having taken steps, I should say, to establish within a 3-month period, an internal audit unit for this particular company that is 20 years in existence. So I would like the 3 entities to collaborate and to move with haste to have this unit established. And there are a number of policies that remain outstanding, including risk management policy. We would like the company to work post haste in establishing and in submitting to this committee. I've also indicated that there are several questions that, because of the time, we were not able to pursue. So we shall submit to the company through its CEO to have written responses to in the coming hours and maybe a couple of days thereafter. So I would like to say on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee and our members, we'd like to expressly record our appreciation and thanks to the officials and representatives coming before this committee this morning. And I refer specifically to the officials/representatives of the National Schools Dietary Service Company Limited, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Finance Investments Division for being with us today. We'd like to also thank the viewing and listening publics for tuning in to this inquiry. And again, we'd like to thank the officials and representatives for being with us this morning. At this time, we'd like to excuse you all from this meeting and thank you once again for being with us. So officials from the 3 entities, you are now excused, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.